Dan Ives, Managing Director, Equity Research, Wedbush Securities. Good morning, Dan, and thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Dan, I'd like to kick off with a very brief comment on the trading session. What's driving the price action in your opinion? We do see stocks flat to negative today after a modest pullback that we saw yesterday.
Look, I think this is going to continue to be some volatility until we get into earnings. Obviously, Netflix coming out. You'll have tech earnings over the next week. We think it's going to be bullish. I mean, ultimately, I think NASDAQ 16,000 end of the year. I think this is the first step higher, even though there's been this rotation trade that we've seen play out the last few months.
All right, you've just mentioned earnings. We're going to be there in a very while. Certainly one of the most important companies that are reporting data after the bell is Netflix. But first of all, I just wanted to show very quickly, yesterday your report, Wedbush lowering Nikola'S price target to $13 and maintains neutral rating. So can you walk us through the details?
Look, we've been cautious on Nikola, just given, I think, some of the hype needed to come out of the story. And really, it's been a nightmare the last 6 months since Trevor, as well as some of the other issues have come about. You know, I think when you look at EV, it's a green tidal wave. And I think many of these names are going to go higher. But for Nikola, it's about execution. And I think some of those timetables could get pushed out, is our thoughts. That's why we lowered the target, continue to be cautious on the name. But no doubt it's a prove me story here. And obviously I continue to view Tesla as well as the Chinese plays like Xpeng, NIO, and others is really the best ways to play the OEM space right now in EV.
So do you think that Nikola might compete with Tesla, because you've always been extremely bullish with EV exactly and hydrogen, as you've mentioned here? But I was wondering, do you think they might compete in the medium to long term?
Look, down the road, when it comes to trucking, that's going to be something that Tesla is focused on. But also there's a lot of other players focused on that as well, Hyzon Motors, as well as a few others. And I think for Nikola right now, it's really about building out that factory in Arizona and coming out with prototypes. I still think the vision could be successful. We just tend to be more cautious there. And time's ticking, because ultimately Tesla and others are continuing to go after this market, especially on the hydrogen side. There's a number of players in Europe.
So let's move very quickly to the earnings season. We did see data from J&J, Procter & Gamble, Lockheed Martin, which, by the way, posted revenues slightly below expectations. But except from airlines, United Airlines, which lost $7.50 per share, we did see J&J, Procter & Gamble, and specifically the banks last week definitely beating estimates. So do you think that companies are doing a great job, or just estimates are too low at this point? Is this the new normal?
I think it's a combination. I think you're going to see beat and raise numbers across the board, led by tech. I think part of it, Street's underestimated maybe the pace of this comeback that we're seeing, as well as the reopening. In terms of the roaring 20s trade, of course, banks, hotels, airlines, and others, could definitely see a benefit in terms of the rotation. But we believe tech continues to be the main player. I think tech stocks are up another 25% plus this year. And I think it all starts with earnings, which Netflix will kick off tonight.
Exactly. So let's talk about Netflix. Simply, what are your expectations? And then we're going to delve deeper into the streaming war, which has been extremely interesting in the past 12 months. But first of all, expectations and numbers.
They continue to own the market. International growth's been the key. And of course, in this remote environment, that's really pulled forward growth, not just for Netflix, but Disney, Amazon, as well as others. And of course, you'll see some moderation of growth. But ultimately, I think the story continues to play out. Pricing increase have been key. And I think right now the big focus is, are there going to be all winners? Because ultimately someone's a loser in this. And I think the big focus is, as more and more competition comes in, it all comes down to content. Content's king, and Netflix continues to be top of the heap.
So when it comes to the streaming war, of course, big media kind of transitioned their aging television focus businesses to focus on subscription streaming services instead. Do you think that there is any company that actually might compete with Netflix, because it looks like it's doing way better even compared to Amazon Prime, which is, how can I say, the closest one?
I think Disney is really the one. I mean, they've come out of the gates. It's been massive in terms of the subscriber numbers, years ahead of even what the bulls thought. But we believe Apple, too, will continue to have more success. For Apple, it's really about adding more content, which ultimately we believe they buy a movie studio over the next 6 to 12 months. But no doubt right now it's an arms race in streaming. And, that's something that's not slowing down. I think what you're going to see across tech earnings, not just from the consumer, but from the enterprise front, is that this digital transformation on the consumer and enterprise is just starting to play out. $2 trillion of spending over the next 3 to 4 years.
So do you think Apple might become one of the major actors also when it comes to streaming services? Because so far it looks like, despite the money that it has invested, it looks like that it's kind of lagging.
Oh, they were late to the game. They lack content. I mean, and that's the continued issue. They have that moat in Cupertino, but no doubt, I think something that Apple has lacked is content. That's why I think what you're seeing too, I think later today that they'll probably announce a podcasting premium service. It's all about services for Apple. And I think when it comes to on the streaming side, I believe they're going to be a lot more aggressive in terms of what I believe is a larger acquisition of Lionsgate, A24, potentially an MGM in terms of what they go after.
And what about possible EV entrance?
Oh, I think it's a matter of when, not if, that they focus on EV. We believe the most likely partner on the EV would be Volkswagen in terms of how that fits. They could also have supplier partnerships, and we believe Apple has an EV car by 2024 on the road. And I think over the next, call it 3-6 months, they lay out the vision with more details for this. Just like we've seen in China. I mean, we're talking about a $5 trillion market in terms of this green tidal wave. And Apple's not going to watch this from the outside looking in.
Well, that's very interesting. I just want to take a step back and get back to Tesla, which is kind of clawing back some gains, 2.15% higher today. But what happened yesterday was extremely important also because China is one of the most important markets for the companies. So do you think after what happened after the incident, anything will change for the company in terms of reputation or even your assessment?
And no doubt, I mean, China is a continued part of the Tesla success story. And you're going to continue to see noise around those issues. But at the end of the day, they're gaining more and more share, especially on the high end of the market from an EV perspective. And you're really starting to see EVs spike in terms of demand. That also helps domestic players like NIO, XPeng, Li Auto, and others. In terms of what we're seeing in terms of the tragic crash, and there's still a lot of things that need to be figured out in terms of the investigation because they do have safety procedures in place where a driver does have to be behind the wheel. After 10 seconds, ultimately that would shut off in terms of any sort of autonomous. So there's a lot of, I think right now, more questions than answers. You saw Musk tweet last night, and they give investors some confidence here. But this is going to be a Rubik's Cube that they're going to have to figure out.
Certainly. It's extremely interesting. In any case, we're going to be following the developments. Thank you very much. Don Ives, Managing Director, Equity Research, Wedbush Securities. Thank you for joining us and have a great day ahead.
You too.